Hi there, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you would like to include closed captioning to this presentation, please click the three dots found at the top right of the toolbar. In the drop-down menu, select Turn on Live Captions. Welcome to Southern California Edison's Wildfire Safety Community Livestream Meeting. My name is Christy Fanous, and I'm the Vice President of Customer Experience and Performance here at Southern California Edison. Thank you for joining us today. This is our 2025 Wildfire Safety Community Meeting. We are joined today by presenters and subject matter experts from across our company. That includes our wildfire and grid hardening teams, our meteorology and fire science teams, our Public Safety Power Shutoff or PSPS operations, business resiliency, customer experience, and local public affairs. A couple of housekeeping items while we still have a number of people trickling in. This is the first of 2 community meetings this month. The same information will be provided at each session. If you would like to ask a question, please click on the Q&A icon and select Ask a Question and type in your question. We will answer the question in the chat or during the Q&A portion at the end of the meeting. Participants can also upvote items they wish to have answered. So you don't need to repeat the question. If you see a question that you like, you can upvote it to make sure that it gets enough likes, and we will be sure to answer. We will attempt to answer as many questions as we can. Our team will monitor the Q&A and provide responses for questions that are relevant to this presentation. Now let's get started with safety. In line with emergency preparedness, we have a very special video message from Orange County Fire Authority Chief Brian Fennessy. Let's go ahead and play the video.
Hello, my name is Chief Brian Fennessy. I'm Chief of the Orange County Fire Authority. Thank you, Southern California Edison, for the opportunity to share this public safety message on behalf of fire officials and emergency services agencies in and around Southern California. An emergency can happen at any time. You can help your family be prepared for any situation with a safety preparedness plan, some basic supplies, and advanced planning. Whether it's a wildfire, an earthquake, or an electrical outage impacting your community, preparedness will help everyone cope better and stay safer. Firefighters train hard to prepare for wildfires. Residents need to do the same thing. Take personal responsibility and learn what you can do today. You can start by consulting one of many guides online to develop you and your family's individual plan. Here in Orange County, we have the Ready, Set, Go initiative, which gives you the tools to protect you, your family, property, and community from wildfires. Please visit our website or your own local fire agency's website for tips on how to stay informed and prepare for wildfires and other emergencies in your community. Be sure to sign up and update your contacts for email and text alerts from your local emergency preparedness agencies, such as Alert OC in Orange County, Alert LA in Los Angeles County, and VC Alert in Ventura County. You also need to make sure you are signed up to receive SCE email and text alerts about outages near you, including Public Safety Power Shutoffs. Finally, to get ready for PSPS incidents, when SCE must de-energize power lines to prevent potential ignitions, be sure to take advantage of the various programs and tips SCE will be discussing in today's meeting. Remember, preparedness is a shared responsibility. By taking action now to prepare for disasters and emergency situations, we can protect ourselves, our families, and our communities. Thank you.
I would also like to thank the Orange County Fire Authority, Los Angeles County Fire, Ventura County Fire for their partnership in operating a fleet of firefighting helicopters provided by SCE. These helicopters, which are known as Quick Reaction Force or QRF, operate year-round, 24 hours a day, and help combat wildfires and keep communities safe. Again, a heartfelt thank you to Chief Fennessy for his important message and their continued partnership. The theme for today's meeting is preparedness for PSPS outages. So we thought we would start with a safety discussion about how to prepare for extended outages. which could be PSPS outages, but could happen in any natural or man-made disasters. So it's always good to be prepared and to have a resilient home. A couple things, you can read what's on the slide. Ensure you have backup lighting like flashlights, stock up extra batteries, prepare your emergency go bag. These are all things that for those of us living in Southern California need to have ready to go in the event of an emergency. Being proactive and prepared for emergencies can significantly reduce risks and ensure your family's safety. In the end, your safety and your family's safety is what matters most. Now let's jump into the content for today on the next slide. Starting with a little background about Public Safety Power Shutoffs that we will refer to as PSPS. Safety is our top priority. When the risk of wildfires is high, PSPS is necessary to save lives and protect communities. The threat of extreme weather and potential wildfire to spread into communities means that more frequent and longer use of PSPS may be required this year. That includes areas that have not yet experienced a PSPS in the past. Losing power for any amount of time is a hardship. While it's frustrating and inconvenient, safety must come first. We continue to invest heavily in resiliency measures, including undergrounding power lines, installing coated wire that we call covered conductor, clearing vegetation near power lines, and inspecting equipment for repairs and maintenance, and integrating advanced technologies to reduce the risk of wildfires by utility equipment. You will hear more about that this evening. Understanding the importance of PSPS in reducing wildfires risks, now let's delve into the significant increase that we're seeing in acres burned in California over the past decade. Next slide, please. Destructive wildfires in California look remarkably different than they used to. Looking at this slide, you can see the magnitude of change in wildfires in just the past 10 years. 15 of the 20 most destructive fires in California history have occurred since 2015. We have always had forest fires, but the scale of destruction has changed, regardless of the source. Wildfires are now occurring more frequently in neighborhoods and not just forests. It's notable that we've already seen wildfires even in the past month, even before the peak summer heat. So to talk more about the fire weather story, let me now introduce Tom Rolinsky, our company's chief fire scientist. Tom, hand it over to you.
All right, well, thank you. Yes, thank you, Christy, and good evening to everyone. I'm happy to be with you here. My name is Tom Rolinsky, and I'm the fire scientist with Southern California Edison. So I'm going to share a few things about our capabilities in terms of our situational awareness and some of our weather modeling. So if we can go into the next slide here, we'll start to cover that. So talking a little bit about our situational awareness, first of all, I wanted to say that really our situational awareness capabilities it's all about having eyes on the environment. And when I mention the environment, I'm talking about the weather conditions, monitoring weather conditions, monitoring the vegetation, and monitoring the potential for a spark to turn into a large wildfire. And so there's a couple of areas, or there's actually 4 areas that I want to cover here. One is our weather stations, and you probably know that we've been. Sorry. Um, Our weather stations have been being installed across our high-risk areas within our service territory for quite a few years now, and we have over 1,800 weather stations that monitor temperature, they monitor wind speed and relative humidity, and we get readings every 10 minutes for each of those weather stations across our service territory. The other thing that we are doing is we're modeling weather conditions and fuel moisture conditions out to 7 days, and that's all done in our in-house weather modeling. Another thing that we do is we are monitoring fuel moisture conditions, and we do what we call fuel sampling, and that's where we actually go out into the field and we collect portions of the vegetation, and we determine how much moisture is in that vegetation. The reason why we do that is because we want to determine how susceptible that vegetation is to wildfire. And so that's really helping us to assess our wildfire potential. And so why do we only do 16 fuel sampling sites? Because the fire agencies do their own sampling. And so they cover a large part of Southern and Central California, but we are trying to fill in some of those gaps. So we fill in those gaps by the 16 sampling sites. And then we also have 200 high definition cameras that monitor basically monitor for smoke conditions and help with early wildfire detection. So all of these tools that we have help us with our situational awareness, with again putting eyes on the environment. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit more about our weather forecasting and we have a team of meteorologists that work at Southern California Edison that are monitoring the weather conditions, not only in real time, but also as we look into the future. So if we're looking 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days into the future, we can see what kind of events might be coming that could trigger a PSPS event for us. And so we have a whole team of meteorologists that are looking at weather conditions. And then on top of that, we have a whole team of fire scientists that are looking at the potential for, again, a spark to turn into a significant wildfire. So we're looking at the combination of not just weather, but weather and vegetation conditions. Those two factors have to come into alignment for us to do a PSPS event. Next slide, please. Now, so once we once we are in a public safety power shutoff event, we've determined which circuits might be in scope for a PSPS event, again, based upon weather conditions, based upon fuel conditions, those conditions coming into alignment. Then we start to monitor in real time the weather conditions, and we start to monitor all of those 1,800 plus weather stations that are putting out, again, readings of temperature, relative humidity, wind speed every 10 minutes. And so we're monitoring those conditions to determine if we need to actually proactively de-energize. And so this is what you're seeing on the screen here is just on the left, just an image of all the weather station locations that we have across our high fire risk areas within our service territory. And then on the right there is just an example of one of the dashboards that we use to help monitor all of that information coming in every 10 minutes. Next slide, please. So the other thing that we do is we take our forecasted weather information and our forecasted fuel moisture conditions, and we take that information. We actually run fire simulations across our whole service territory to determine what the impact of a wildfire would have on one of our communities. So we can do this in a couple of different ways. When we actually do have a wildfire that's occurring within our service territory, we can actually model that fire and see how it's going to impact the community, impact our infrastructure, and we may need to de-energize that particular line. The other thing that we can do is when we've finished up a public safety power shutoff event, if there's any damage to our infrastructure, we can take a look at those circuits that we de-energized and run simulations on the areas where there was damage reported, and we can determine what kind of fire we would have had we not turned the power off. So these are very important tools for us to use to determine what kind of impact wildfires will have on our communities and on our infrastructure. Next slide, please. Okay, so the last thing I want to do is just talk a little bit about what we can expect for our upcoming fire season. And just to give you a little bit of context here before I get into that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the kind of the last few years, what's happening, what has happened over the last few years, and then kind of that'll kind of set the context for what we can expect for this year. So if you recall, back in 2022 and 2023, those were really wet years for us. We had a lot of precipitation that helped to really foster a lot of vegetation growth across the area. And so we had this buildup of vegetation going into 2024, which was a very dry year for us, which actually also spilled into the first part of this year. And in 2022 and 2023, there weren't that many wind events that would trigger PSPS. So that's one of the reasons why we didn't have that many PSPS events in 2022 and 2023. But then we got into 2024, a very dry year, a lot of vegetation that was carried over from those two wet years. And then we had a lot of wind events on top of that. So that's what triggered a lot of PSPS events for us in 2024. And then, of course, into the first part of this year. So if we can go to the next slide here, and this will be my last slide, and then I'm going to finish up here. So looking at our forecast for this year, we're looking at, first of all, an active fire season. We're, because of the lack of precipitation, we are in a drought condition across at least the southern half of the state, and that's the map that you see on the right. There's a lot of drought conditions that are starting to spread from south to north across California, and we expect the drought to intensify across Southern California because we're not expecting really any more significant precipitation until this coming winter. So basically from now through the fall, we're not expecting any major precipitation outside of a few thunderstorms that will impact our mountain and desert locations from time to time this summer. But outside of that, we're not looking for any major precipitation. So things are going to stay dry, and the drought conditions, unfortunately, are going to worsen across the area. The vegetation is drying out as I speak, and it will continue to dry out for the rest of the summer and into the fall. And so when we get into the later part of the summer and the fall, the vegetation is going to be primed for significant fire to occur. So we're really preparing ahead of time for what we expect to be an active fire season, an active summer fire season, and then an active fall fire season with the return of Santa Ana winds. I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Jude Snyder, who's going to talk about PSPS operations. So Jude, it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to frame up a little bit who I am and how my group fits in. You just heard Tom speak. He is our fire scientist. He has a team of fire scientists. My department is called Business Resiliency, and we are the technical experts behind PSPS and behind all of our emergency response. We also have 6 meteorologists. I think Tom referenced them, a seismologist, a structural engineer, team of trainers with military and emergency management backgrounds. So we are skilled in emergency response, and that is all we do. I want to thank you. I want to thank Chief Hennessy for really framing how important resiliency and emergency response is, because this is where we live. All right, let's move to the next slide here. So any of you from military backgrounds know the term bluff, which is bottom line up front. This is a bluff slide. I am giving you transparently what we're looking at for the PSPS season in 2025. You can read along with me. It's not great. Building on what Tom said about the weather conditions, looking at what happened with the devastating windstorms and wildfires in January 2025, we are seeing the severe risk that Southern California is facing. Christy mentioned, she showed you that graph of the fire damage and how it's increasing, how the last 10 years have seen 15 of the top 20 most destructive wildfires. And we are responding by keeping our communities safe. So let me go through this. We are anticipating that our updated criteria and wind speed thresholds will result in potentially 20 to 40% more PSPS activations than last year. And outage events may be up to twice as large, meaning that twice as many customers would be impacted. This is assuming the same weather as 2024. And as you heard, 2024 was a pretty strong PSPS season. So we are looking at an even tougher season. We are expanding our circuits and boundaries. Every year we do a review of circuits. This year we are adding around 47,000 more customers in our high fire risk areas. And we're expanding precautionary boundaries that will add up to 123,000 more customer accounts that could be in scope for PSPS. These are customers that have not experienced PSPS in the past. And so this is going to be new. I know that we've invited some customers today who are on the new circuits, so this is a new experience for you. Last thing, and this started late last year, but we have a 24/7 monitoring alert system through our watch office. We will capture unexpected weather. So if we have to, we will start a PSPS event by de-energizing and then pick up our activation. So we might have some sun de-energizations which are tied to PSPS. In that case, our notifications would follow. I'm going to explain all this in the next slides, but this is very much just being transparent, talking about what we are looking at. And now let me follow up by giving you some information about how we do PSPS, what this all means. So let's move to the next slide, please. All right, this sort of puts that last slide into context a little bit. We have two things we're looking at here when we get into a PSPS event. Fire Potential Index, or which we call FPI, which is a formula for fire ignition. It includes the things that Tom was talking about. It includes humidity levels, dryness of vegetation, and also wind speeds. But then we also have a wind speed threshold, and that is based on the speeds at which our system is vulnerable to flying debris or that pose a risk to our infrastructure. So the Fire Potential Index is currently in an elevated range, contingent on having fire suppression resources available. Wind speed thresholds change, and you will hear this, you'll hear us talk about covered conductor. Covered conductor is our wires have been fully covered, and they're less sensitive. They're not sensitive to vegetation blow in, but so they have a higher wind speed. Bare wire circuits, what we're concerned about is not just the wires coming down, but we're concerned about vegetation hitting both wires and causing a spark. We look at the wind speeds separately for each circuit based on the specific risks of the event. And if actual conditions suggest more risk, or if it's a large scale event, we will de-energize at lower thresholds than we would in a smaller event. So we might de-energize when we see that we're going to hit that threshold wind speed, but before we actually get there. Let me go to the next slide. For those of you that have experienced PSPS before, you'll be familiar with most of this cadence here. There is one change which I want to bring to your attention, but we start planning for a PSPS about 4 to 7 days out. We use the modeling and the weather forecasting that Tom alluded to. We also have a weather forecast. We have a weather alert webpage, and the web address is in the last slide, which will be attached to this presentation. Then 3 days ahead, when possible, when we see the weather, if we see it at 3 days out, we will start notifying all customers, all of our public safety partners, and we'll activate our incident management team to actively look at the event and plan for it. Now, we used to just send these notifications to public safety partners at 3 days out and then to customers at 2 days out, but this aligns everybody together so that everybody hears at the same time. It's also when we turn on our outage page for PSPS on our website. So you can see if you're in scope for PSPS, because you'll see we call it a polygon. It's kind of a shape, sort of a oval around or around the circuit, and you can see whether your home is on that. We will update our customers and partners 2 days ahead, 1 day ahead, and then 1 to 4 hours before we shut off or before we expect to shut off, we'll send an expected shut off notification. We used to send this every 4 hours until some of our customers and partners basically kind of cried uncle on us and said it was enough. We were sending them too frequently. So now if you get an expected shut-off notification, that lasts for the rest of the PSPS event. We send a notification when shut-off is authorized. We send another notification when we are about to start our re-energization process. And I'm going to talk a little more about that in one of the later slides, because it's not immediately prior to re-energizing it. It's a little slower than that. And then we'll send a notification when power is restored after inspection. And if we have sent you this notice and your power hasn't been restored, then you should give us a call or send in because there's some other wire situation, because when we send you the notice, you should see your power restored. Let me go to the next slide. I wanted to talk a little about our field operations, because while we're in a control room, usually a virtual control room, determining the wind speed thresholds, we also have teams in the field. The teams start before we turn off power, and they look for hazards that could present an imminent danger. They look to see if there are equipment that needs fixing, or that would be particularly vulnerable in a windstorm. And we start that 5 days in advance, so we have a little time to make repairs and also to assess the level of damage. But now we also have live field observers who are in the field during events. They observe field conditions, they monitor winds, they assess damage. But they also have handheld weather stations called kestrels. And these kestrels are on sticks or they're on the trucks. So they can actually determine whether the wind at a particular location is stronger or less strong than it looks like from the static weather stations. Those weather stations, as Tom said, are on or near every circuit. So they're not. We have a lot of them, and we have 1,870 of them in the high fire risk areas. But we also have the live field observers for added looks. So I know we have customers who are concerned that we don't see what's going on, but we try to see what's going on every circuit in a PSPS event. Next slide, please. So I want to talk about restoration. I also have a short video clip to show you about restoration in the field. These photos here are photos of damage after our January 4th, 2025 event. And you'll see that they are significant damage. One of them was actually inspected in the nighttime. You can see the bottom one on the right there. These photos are in our post-event report, which we file with the CPUC, the California Public Utilities Commission, after every one of our PSPS events. We file them 10 days later, and they basically give you an entire narrative about what happened in the PSPS event. So restoration typically takes up to 8 hours. And that sometimes surprises customers, because they're thinking, well, the wind's over, let's turn the power back on. And as you can see from these pictures, that would be a risky proposition. We have to make sure every line is unscathed and undamaged. But let's go to the video and we can look at this a little closer.
We just got okay to re-energize this section of line. This was off for PSPS, and in order to do so, we had to complete a post-patrol, which requires us to look at all the power lines. As we drive by, we're looking at all the overhead for damage after the winds have come and gone. We want to inspect the line 100% to make sure there's nothing wrong, and that takes time. A common question we get is, what, the wind's gone, but the power's still not on. Well, there's a period of time that we're doing these post patrols, and the post patrol requires us to physically look at all the power lines that are in the community that's off and make sure there's no hazards. You know, we're looking for down wires. We're looking for things that may have broken our infrastructure in the wind, because that could all create a hazard when we re-energize a line and possibly create a fire. We love getting the power back on after something's happened, and that's what we're here to do. But we have to do it in a safe manner.
We occasionally will need helicopter patrol or foot patrol to do these restoration patrols. And if we do, then means we have to wait for daylight. So those customers on those lines might have to wait until the following morning, even if we have the all clear in the middle of the night. And then we'll do a quick helicopter patrol and get their power restored. All right, let's move to the next slide. So this is probably the most frequent question we get, and it seems baffling to our customers. Why does my neighbor have power when I don't? And it's never asked the other way around. And I want to kind of show you, this is an AI version of a neighborhood. And we're looking at our somewhat unfortunate friend in the orange box on the right. And you can see that his house is in a corner. It's not even in a high fire risk area. It's sort of on the edge of a high fire risk area. But his circuit runs through that high fire risk area. So we are concerned about that line. And we can't keep him on while we turn off the other pieces of the line because of the way it's connected. Nor can we turn him on through, we can't get him to that blue or the purple circuit. There's no wire there. When we can, we do switch customers to different circuits, but our circuitry was built for the resiliency of the system. It wasn't designed specifically for PSPS. And when we can, we will make these adjustments. But sometimes, as in the case of this customer here, they're going to be, unfortunately, on a high fire risk area circuit and subject to PSPS. Next slide, please. So Christy talked about this a little bit as well. I wanted to just end on our QRF, Quick Reaction Force aerial firefighting assets, which includes the world's largest helitankers. But beyond being large, these helitankers have the unique ability to fly at night. And at night, when the winds are down, it's often the best time to put down fire retardant. In the daytime, the winds come up. It isn't always possible to get the helitankers up. So these QRF helitankers have been a significant asset to fighting fires in Southern California. They're available to all jurisdictions within our service area and our partnership with Orange, Los Angeles, and Ventura County fire agencies. So that's it for my slides. I know I threw out a lot of technical information, and there is going to be some time at the end for a Q&A if you put some Q&A into the questions into the chat. At this time, I want to hand off to my colleague, Rosa Perea, who is going to talk about customer programs and resources. Thanks.
Thank you, Jude. Good evening. My name is Rosa Perea, Senior Manager of our PSPS Customer Support and Accessibility team. Thank you for joining us today. So we do recognize that PSPS events can be disruptive. Our goal is to ensure all of our customers are equipped with all the information and tools available to support you before, during, and after these events. SCE uses a whole community approach to help disseminate information and ensure our customers and communities are prepared for PSPS events. We actively collaborate with local and tribal governments, public safety partners, critical infrastructure providers, and community-based organizations. Here are 4 key ways that we can all work together to improve community resiliency. First, learn and share the information about SCE's customer support programs with your family, friends, and neighbors. You can also improve your resiliency and emergency preparedness, both personal and commercial. Ensure your household and emergency contact information is updated with SCE so you get timely notifications. And lastly, we want you to promote awareness and stay informed. So we encourage you to visit sce.com PSPS during PSPS events. We encourage you to attend Wildfire Safety Community Meetings throughout the year, like the one we're in today. And we also want you to look for our annual PSPS newsletter that is sent to all customers in high fire risk areas. Slide. We have several programs and resources to support customers during PSPS events. First, we open community resource centers and deploy our community crew vehicles. Community resource centers are indoor temperature control centers that provide snacks, water, charging stations, and resiliency kits for customers. We also provide additional support for customers with access and functional needs. For example, individuals who may need additional assistance due to any condition that limits their ability to act in an emergency. Our community crew vehicles are mobile vans offering similar resources in outdoor locations when suitable indoor space is not available. We partner with 211, who offers free and confidential 24/7 care coordination, emergency planning, and referrals for food, transportation, and accommodations. We also work with Disability Disaster Access and Resources, known as DDAR, which is a program managed by the California Foundation for Independent Living Centers that provides support for elderly and disabled customers, especially those that use medical devices. And DDAR also provides hotel assistance, transportation, and long-term battery loans. We also encourage customers to call 211 or use the 211 Now Care Coordination app to get personalized support. Our medical baseline program is an assistance program for residential customers who require the regular use of electrically powered medical equipment or other qualifying medical devices. For example, an oxygen generator, motorized wheelchair, or a CPAP machine. There is no income requirement, and the program helps offset electricity costs for customers that need medical equipment. If we can't reach customers who are enrolled in medical baseline during a PSPS events through their contact information, we will follow up with in-person visits as necessary. So we ask that you please help us spread the word. Enrollment in the medical baseline program is critical for those that qualify. We also offer several programs to help customers improve their resiliency. The Critical Care Backup Battery Program provides free battery plus solar panel for qualifying customers that are enrolled in medical baseline program that reside in high fire risk areas, and are enrolled in either the California Alternate Rates for Energy, known as CARE, or the Family Electric Rates Assistance, FERA program. The in-event loan battery pilot loans out temporary batteries during a PSPS event through 211 for customers that have not yet enrolled in Critical Care Backup Battery Program. We also offer rebates on portable batteries and generators for customers that reside in high fire risk areas. And the rebates include $150 for portable batteries, $200 to $600 for generators, and rebates for whole home battery systems through the self-generation incentive program. And links to all these will be in, I think, Christy's final slide. So all these programs are especially important for income qualified and customers that do have access and functional needs. Next slide. So at the start of our meeting, Christy shared some important tips to prepare for extended outages, and I have a few more on this slide that I want to share to help everyone prepare for PSPS events. First, we encourage you to confirm if you or your family members or neighbors qualify for medical baseline or the critical care backup battery programs. These programs provide additional support and notifications for those who rely on electricity for medical needs. We encourage you to have key phone numbers for doctors and family members easily accessible. Another important thing, which I personally learned, you need to know how to open your garage door or gates manually because the automatic system won't work during a power outage. And then familiarize yourself with your home's utility shutoff points for electric, gas, or water. And of course, know how to turn them off safely and then back on when it's time. If you are considering installing a home generator, you should always consult with a licensed electrician to ensure it's installed safely and in compliance with local codes. And then finally, we ask that you create a family emergency plan and make sure you have emergency kits and go bags ready. So essential items that you can include in your first aid are in your go bags are first aid kits, water, non-perishable food, external batteries, and medications. These simple but important steps can definitely make a big difference in staying safe and resilient during a PSPS event. And then on the bottom left corner of the slide, you will find information to help you download emergency preparedness guides available from various sources, including SCE, the American Red Cross, California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, and U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Next slide. Okay, so Jude did touch on our whole notification timeline, but I have some other information here. So to ensure our communities stay informed during a PSPS event, we provide notifications by email, text, or voice call based on our customers' preferences. And address level alerts are also available so that non-SCE account holders can stay informed for specific addresses. We always encourage customers to visit our SCE Customer Preference Center to make sure they update their contact info and manage how they receive notifications. And we ask non-SCE account holders to sign up for address-specific alerts at SCEPSPS.com. On the right side, you'll see our outage map. So we want to confirm that this outage map does have a consolidated view of outages and PSPS outages, and you can find it at sce.com/outage map. And on this map, and you can't really see it here, but if you actually go to our current map, you'll see it. The maps include icons that show where community resource centers are, community crew vehicles, EV charging stations, hotel assistants, and food banks. So that concludes my update on our customer programs and resources. And now I'm going to pass it over to Ray Frugier for the next topic.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Rosa. So hi, my name is Ray Frugier. I am the Director of Asset and System Intelligence here at Southern California Edison. And I'm going to be highlighting some of the work we've done in terms of our wildfire mitigation plan and our grid hardening work. And so this is all work that we're doing to try to reduce the likelihood of wildfires associated with SCE facilities and also to reduce the likelihood and the need for PSPS. And so first, I just want to level set everybody. Every 3 years, SCE and all other investor-owned utilities in the state file what's called a wildfire mitigation plan with the state of California. It's a 3-year plan that lays out what we're going to do to reduce those likelihoods of fire and PSPS. We're currently in our current plan that covers years 2023 to 2025. We just filed our plan that's going to cover years 26, 27, and 28. And in those plans, it's a very robust plan that says how we're going to really, reduce those risks. And it's kind of built on 4 pillars. And those 4 pillars are grid hardening. How are we going to make the grid more resilient? How are we going to make it stronger to weather storms, to reduce the likelihood of an ignition? Also bolstering situational awareness capabilities. And this is really what Tom Rydlinski, our fire scientist, discussed earlier. How are we making the system and how are we getting more information about what's happening out there? Also enhancing operational practices, changing how we do things. How can we be smarter? How can we make better decisions to reduce those risks? And then the last is about how do we use data and information really to make sure we are doing the right mitigations in the right place and really driving this risk down across our territory for our customers. And so I'll cover a little of what we're doing on our hardening work. And so I'll start with the left side and I'll work left to right. Our first is our cover conductor program. And what this program is, it's taking bare wire, because most overhead wires on electric poles are bare. That just means it's just pure metal on the pole. We are taking that wire off and installing covered conductor. This is metal wire that has insulation or a coating around that wiring. So it reduces the likelihood if something flew into the wire from starting a fire, in high winds, if the wires contacted each other, if a car hit a pole and the wire falls on the ground. This all helps reduce the likelihood of an ignition start with the wiring. And from independent lab testing, we see that it's very effective against those cases. And since 2018, we've installed 6,450 miles. Now, to put this in perspective, I'm going to give you two quick analogies. One, that is the distance from Los Angeles to Auckland, New Zealand by plane, or it's the same distance as going from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C., back to Los Angeles, then back to Washington, D.C. So crossing the country 3 times. And we've done that since late 2018. But the cover conductor program is not just changing the wire. We're also installing better transformers on there. So that's the little, it looks like a kind of like a metal trash can on the pole. We're installing better ones that have a higher, flame resistant fluid in those transformers. We're covering all our connections. So we really want to reduce this likelihood of fire. So this is our foundational program. But that's not all we're doing. Some other things we're doing. We're installing fire resistant poles. And what this is we have 2 types. We have one, it's a fiberglass pole, and we also have a wood pole where we're putting this mesh around the base of the pole. And both of these situations, if a fire, for whatever reason, comes and burns into those poles, they're designed to not fall over and burn. On the wood poles with that mesh gives off a foam when it's hit with heat. It expands and protects the pole. The fiberglass is a material that won't burn. So this is really protecting the poles. The reason this is important, if a fire, yet again, for whatever reason burns into an area, we want to keep those poles up. We don't want to see those poles fall across the street, block roads, block egress of the community. So it's really about keeping those poles and those wires up in the air. We're doing other things. As you can see, protective devices. We're installing faster protection. What does this really mean? So we're changing out how our protective devices work. So this is very similar to your house. Most houses have a circuit breaker at your outside panel or your inside panel that protect the wiring in your house. But in your bathroom and your kitchen, there's something called a ground fault outlet. Those operate faster in high-risk situations where there's water present, and that's designed to protect you and make it safer for you. We're doing something very similar with our protective devices. We're making them operate faster in our high fire area. So if a condition does occur, by having them operate faster, it reduces the energy release and reduces the likelihood of a fire. So we've been upgrading our system to have faster acting fuses, faster acting relays to make it safer for people. As we go, the next is targeted undergrounding. That's another program we're doing to reduce the risk of wildfire. There's some areas, and I'll get in a little more on the next slide, that are very high risk. And in these high risk situations, we're taking the overhead wire and burying it underground. Oh no, please go back a slide. Thank you. When you underground the lines, you significantly reduce the risk of wildfires, you reduce the risk of PSPS, and so you're making it much safer. But undergrounding is more expensive. We're finding cover conductor is about $900,000 a mile. Undergrounding can be up to $4 million plus a mile, and it's also longer to do. So we are balancing those two, but in some areas we do undergrounding. Additionally, we're looking at new and evaluating new strategies to harden our transmission system, the big towers, the larger poles. We're doing splice shunting, we're doing enhanced system design. So we're really looking at ways to enhance even our transmission lines. So we're doing all of this. And one thing I forgot to mention under protective devices, and I want to come back to there, it's buried in the text. It's called Rapid Earth Fault Current Limiter. This is a technology that has been used in Europe, and also Australia really deployed this after their devastating wildfires that they had. And it serves as an extra protection. It can sense when a wire breaks, and before it hits the ground, it can de-energize the line. So we have been starting to install these RevCol, which is the short for that Rapid Earth Fault Current Limiter, throughout our system. And it protects all the wires in a large area. And when you pair that with covered conductor, you get a really good mitigation effectiveness. So we're pairing that with our covered conductor to get that extra mitigation. So if we could go forward a slide, please. Now, that's a lot of work we've done, but how are we prioritizing the work? Because as I mentioned, we've installed 6,450 miles of covered conductor. We have a little less than 10,000 miles of distribution line that we need to mitigate in our high fire area. So you can't do it all at once. So you have to do it in a prioritized manner. So we're using what's called our integrated wildfire mitigation strategy to prioritize how we do work and how we're deploying our mitigations. And I'll just describe how we do this. You can see as you start on the left, we take a bunch of different factors, fire risk areas that were defined by the state of California, where our circuits are, the fuel conditions, population density, structure density, and we take all this information and we run it and we look at it and we examine it. And then we subdivided our high fire area into 3 zones or 3 areas. First, the severe risk area, which is at the top in that middle column. And these are areas where we can see egress constraint. Egress constraint means if there's a fire or a natural disaster, people are going to have a hard time getting out of an area. So those are areas we want to make sure we're protecting. Extreme high wind areas. As Jude mentioned, we have a covered conductor threshold that's above our bare wire thresholds. But what we are seeing is there's some locations where it exceeds our covered conductor threshold. And so that's an extreme wind area or extreme consequence area. This is an area where you could have a large catastrophic fire. And based upon our fire science modeling, we're looking at 10,000 acres in 8 hours as that extreme area. So that's our severe risk area. In these areas, if we haven't deployed a mitigation yet, we are looking to underground the lines in those areas. And that's going to be our foundation of how we're going to mitigate the risk there. The next is our high consequence areas. These are areas that are the next riskiest. These are locations where you could see a fire be somewhere between 300 acres to less than 10,000 acres in 8 hours. Or you can have winds that will exceed our bare PSPS thresholds, our bare conductor PSPS thresholds. So in those areas, we're deploying covered conductor to really mitigate those risks. And then there's other HFRA areas. They're not a severe or a high consequence area. They're areas where you won't see those large fires develop, but it's still in a high fire area, and we're going to work those next. So we're using this methodology to how we're going to prioritize work. But that all comes from machine models. We really need to make sure we are doing what is right for our customers, deploying the mitigations that are going to really buy down that risk. So before we're deploying mitigations, we have a team of experts review and validate that the mitigation we're looking to deploy is the appropriate mitigation in that area. So we have this mitigation process. We're using inspection photos, satellite imagery, and other data to make sure when we're looking, we're deploying what is right. Does it need to go from covered conductor to undergrounding? Because we have risks there that may not be mitigated fully by covered conductor. Looking at all these different factors, the timeline to deploy it. So we don't just take what our models are telling us. We're actually having engineers, our fire scientists, review this to make sure we're buying and doing the appropriate risk buy down. If we could go to the next slide, please. Now, that's kind of how we're doing hardening, but there's more than just the grid hardening that we've done. I've already covered the cover conductor, but we have trimmed and or removed 2.5 million trees since late 2018. To put this in perspective, we have about 800,000 trees that we actively are managing in our high fire risk areas. That means on average, every tree has been trimmed about 3 times over that time period. We've done over 1.5 million inspections in our high fire risk areas. We have about 300,000 structures in this area. So we have visited these structures for an inspection on average about 5 times. We are prioritizing and inspecting some structures twice a year just to make sure that they are safe and are operating in good condition. I know Tom has covered the number of weather stations that we've deployed and the number of cameras. In addition to that, when we do have to operate PSPS, we have the community resource centers available, our community crew vehicles, so we can try to mitigate the impacts of PSPS. Through this year, we plan to install another 500 miles of cover conductor to really mitigate that risk throughout. So that's just a little bit by the numbers of what we're doing to reduce the risk of wildfire mitigation, what our wildfire mitigation is doing to reduce the risk of wildfires associated with SCE facilities and reduce our PSPS risk. And with that, I will now turn it back to Rosa for Q&A. Rosa?
Thank you, Ray, and thank you to all our presenters for sharing very important information with our customers today. As everyone was presenting, our staff was working behind the scenes, providing responses to some of the questions in the chat, but I know we have a couple more that have not been answered. So I want to start with a question from Ruthie Brock. Why do you cut power on circuits in areas where lines are undergrounded? Are circuits not segmented? So Jude, I'm going to ask you to answer that one, please.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen for a second because I want to walk you through what this looks like with my pointer. All right. I can't see you, but let me hold on a second. All right. I can't tell if you can see my screen. Can you?
We can see it.
Okay, perfect. All right, and you can see my pointer, and that's why I wanted to show it to you in not in presentation mode. So let's look back at this diagram here, and let's say that this segment here, which I'm following, and you can see it's the one that our customer here is on, is undergrounded. So they're pretty safe. However, the customers here on the way to them are not undergrounded. And we're going to have to turn off power here for these customers because they're not safe and they're potentially at risk from PSPS. We don't have anywhere to go with these customers. There's no way to keep them energized when this section here is de-energized. And yes, I mean, we do have switching plans. So here's a switching plan, but you'll see that the switches doesn't help them because it's below the area that needs to be de-energized. So that's the essential issue. And I know Ray was talking about the covered conductor and the targeted undergrounding program, and we are looking for situations like this where we have customers who are undergrounded, but because of where they are in a circuit, they're still subject to PSPS. And we're looking particularly at those areas in our undergrounding. And let me stop sharing and ask Ray if you want to add anything to that.
You really covered it. Yes, we are. The way circuitries work, sometimes it could go from overhead to underground. Also, there could be an issue with the transmission lines feeding an area where they have to get turned off. So it's the large, big wires could get turned off. There's many different reasons. We do try to minimize that impact of our public, our PSPS as much as we can.
Okay, thank you, Jude and Ray. Ray, I think I have a question for you from JS. How does Edison identify that an address is in a high fire risk area? I have checked in CAL FIRE fire hazard map and my address is not part of their high fire risk area.
Yes, so CAL FIRE has a map. So there's a couple different maps. I'll explain this. So CAL FIRE has the fire severity zone map. And so that map is based upon looking at areas the state is responsible for. Could a fire burn into that area? It's kind of akin to a flood map. How's the likelihood of a flood going to go? So that is the one source. We operate, the utilities are operating to what's called the CPUC CAL FIRE map. Sorry, the CPUC high fire map, which is based upon if an ignition could occur from a utility facility, how impactful could it be? So there's a couple different maps. So on our website, it is possible you can type in your address and on the one part and look up to see if you're in a high fire area from our maps. Also, you can look at the CPUC map to see if you're there. Their map is available, and you can type an address as well to see if you're in a high fire area according to their map as well. So because there is that CAL FIRE and that CPUC map, we're utilizing the CPUC map as our base of what's a high fire area.
Thank you, Ray. I have another question here from Carlos Samano. Have measures been taken to ensure that PSPS outage maps match what is actually happening? In other words, there were instances where homes had an outage, but the area in the SCE website did not include their property was impacted. Ray or Jude, do you want to take that?
Yeah, and one of the things that we find that's concerning, and I'll let Ray also add to this because we both came online here, but during PSPS events, we call PSPS events because we have high winds, and high winds also cause windstorm outages. During windstorms, we will have wires down. So not every time we have a wire down is it something that we've proactively done. And we know that in January, this got very confusing because we had a lot of customers out, and they were out for three reasons. They were out for PSPS, they were out because of windstorm damage, or they were out because of the fires. And it was indeed, we acknowledge, confusing for customers to understand where they fell. But let me see, Ray, did you want to add to that?
You covered it really well. I would just add, we have had heard some issues with our reporting on information. We're constantly working to make sure that what the information we give is the best that we have. So we had heard some issues about our reporting and the data we were publishing. We are actively working always to make sure that we are giving the most up-to-date information to everybody.
Thank you, Jude and Ray again. I do see Joanna Romo has her hand raised, but the mics are not available for this meeting. So Joanna, if you could please put your question in the chat, then we can answer it later on. Carlos Samana also had a question. Will the PowerPoint presentation be shared with the people attending the meeting? And the answer is yes. We will get the meeting materials out in a couple of days. Okay, and I think, Ray, I have another question for you. To the question about why Edison has identified my address as high fire risk area, why are you using two maps and what is the difference between the two? Why not just use the CAL FIRE map? It's very confusing for customers. And that's from Diana.
Yes, Diana, I can understand why that would be confusing, having two maps. So investor-owned utilities such as Southern California Edison are under the jurisdiction of the California Public Utilities Commission. They created a high fire map that designates the areas, and this map was developed years ago. So we have to follow their map, not CAL FIRE, because they're our regulatory agency. So we're following that map that we are required to follow. That's the simple answer. But their map is different because their map was based upon if an ignition occurred, could it cause a large fire? The CAL FIRE map, as I mentioned, is based upon will a fire go into an area. So they're actually a little different. They're both really important to understand, but they are different. But the simplistic answer is investor-owned utilities are under the CPUC, so we need to follow their map. I will also point out the CPUC's map was created using information from CAL FIRE, also other subject matter experts about how utility fires work. So it was really aimed at utility fires. So that is why there's the two different mapping. I know it doesn't make it any less confusing to have two maps, but that was the reason.
Thank you, Ray. We have a question from Don Lade. In rural areas such as Acton, when a PSPS is called and goes on for longer than 3 days, in January of this year, we were shut off 3 times in January for 4 days each time. Will you start supplying the community center with trucked water for our horses, dogs, and farm animals? I am on a well, and without electricity, we have no water. The 1-gallon jug offered at the Acton Community Center is insufficient. So Dawn, thank you for your question. I will actually have to take that back to my team and see if that's something that we can do to support the Acton community. And then we have a question from Kathy Barton. Thank you in advance for sharing the presentation slides. Would it be permissible for me to share this with the homeowners served by our Fire Safe Council? And Christy, I'm going to guess the answer for that would be yes, since this is a public presentation. So yes, Kathy, when we distribute the post-meeting materials, they will be posted on an external facing website, and you will be able to share that information. Okay. And then B, January had a comment, not a question. Just wanted to thank you all for sharing your time and expertise in this important work. Thank you. Okay. James, am I missing any other questions in the chat?
I'm not seeing any additional questions in the chat, though we did share with some people that had very specific questions about their neighborhood. We asked them to go ahead and email us so that we can follow up with them.
Right. Ray or James, sorry, can you take another look in the chat to see if we have any other questions, or if we can move to wrap up?
Just one that just came in now, and you should be able to see it. This one is from Chong. I live in Fullerton, Orange County. The letter sent by SCE indicates that my house belongs to HFRA. Because of that, I believe my home insurance jumps from $950 to $3,500. What's your opinion?
So I don't think the two may necessarily be correlated. So this is Ray with Asset and System Intelligence. The insurance companies do modeling, look at risk. How their modeling works, I do not know. So I don't want to over-index saying the two are correlated or not correlated, but they are examining, looking at risks. I'm not fully versed in how insurance modeling works, but they have things that they do that are evaluating that risk. So it's probably based more on what they're seeing. I can't really say if it's because we sent a letter or not. I don't think it's correlated. I would more reach out and talk to your insurance company to better understand why. That would be my suggestion.
Okay, thank you. So I don't see any other questions in the chat either. And I think the staff was responding to some of the questions individually. So with that, I think that concludes the Q&A portion of the meeting. So thank you all for your questions and feedback. We will send out the post-meeting materials in a few days, and that will include some other frequently asked questions that you can reference. So now let's welcome Christy back to close us out.
Great. Thank you so much, Rosa and team, for the information that was shared today. I also want to take a moment to thank those of you who are on the call who took time out of your busy schedules to join us this evening and to learn more about how to be prepared for public safety power shutoffs. The slide you're seeing now has some helpful links and websites. We will be sharing this presentation material with you. It's recorded, so please do keep a copy of this slide handy in case you need it for reference. Next slide, please. Again, thank you to everyone for participating this evening. Using the QR code there that's on the left of the screen, feel free to complete the survey to provide feedback about this evening's event. In addition, the survey link and presentation will be emailed to everyone that registered for this event. This meeting has been recorded, and we will post the recording on our website in a few days at sce.com/wildfire, as well as other information and resources. Again, thank you for joining this evening, and please have a wonderful night. Take care.